Yeah,
really interested in that.
I know, he's interested in that. He's focused on that.
Good thing. I just drove through there the other day on a regular day, and it's pretty crowded.
Yeah, it is. Rush hour is pretty scary down there.
So when we put in the research and development buildings, there's a lot of cars coming through.
Yes, I know, yeah. Well, there's a lot of, that's heavy. My brother came up from Massachusetts and leased some space there. So he
Hey, everybody?
Massachusetts,
You mean
in that research and development.
show starting?
Now call to order the October 19th, 2017 meeting of the City of Nashville Planning Board. Secretary, will you the roll call, please?
Yes, Mayor Donches, Mike Peterson,
Present.
Adam Varley,
Here.
Scott Leclaire,
Here.
Ed Weber, here. Alderman Sean McGinnis,
I'm here.
Alderman Thomas Lopez, Steve Dukraine, Dan Kelly,
Here.
David Robbins,
Here.
Jerry Rapucci.
Here.
That's it. Okay, and we have a quorum, and everyone's participating and voting this evening. Approval of minutes from the October 5th, 2017 meeting. Were there any questions, comments on the minutes?
Yeah. I make a motion, you approve them?
Motion by Mr. Rapucci to approve the minutes. Is there a second? Second. Second by Mr. Leclerc. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Abstain.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, me too. Abstain.
2 abstentions. So motion passes with 2 abstentions. Communications. Good evening, Roger.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Board. If you turn to your packet, there's only 3 items. The first item is an amended agenda, case number 3, John J. Flatley Company, 28 townhomes, has been requested by the applicant to be postponed to the November 2nd meeting. You have a communication on case number 2, which is the CrossFit Tough Fitness Club changed of hours of operations. This is a letter, or I should say an email from an abutter with concerns, so you should look at that because this individual will not be at the meeting tonight. And then lastly, you have an email pertaining to the postponement of case number 3, which I referred to you in your amended agenda, and that's all we have tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Report of committee and liaison. Anything to report, Mr. Kelly, Mr. Weber?
Yes,
Mr. Kelly?
I'd like to report on CIC, Capital Improvement Committee. The kickoff meeting for the CIC committee was held on Monday, the 16th of this week. This year, we're implementing a different approach. We're going to ask each division and department to prioritize their projects in their departments and divisions. In addition, we're asking them to suggest how it should be paid for. And thirdly, to provide additional guidance, we asked for and got from the mayor some guidance as to what his priorities are. So we mix all of that together and come up with our recommendations to the board. The recommendations this time will also include how does it fit into the budget and how does it fit into our bonding authority. There's a lot of key items coming up, expensive items like the repair of the schools and all that sort of thing. The other item that we've initiated a few years ago, we'll continue this year, is tell us, the priority is to repair, not replace. And lastly, they had elections, and Roger was secretary, Charlie Boudreaux was vice chair, and I was nominated and approved to be chair. And lastly, I'd like to say that as a result of all this effort. We hope to have a schedule that will fit into with the budgets, you know. It's a 6-year plan, it's not an annual plan, although we do it annually. And we're trying to fit all of these requirements into the bonding schedule, into the budgeting scheduling, so it makes sense. And so the report we produce will be a useful tool to help the aldermen and the mayor. That's it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly.
No applications for the Historical District Commission.
Thanks, Mr. Rubin. Okay. I'll now read the procedure for this evening's meeting. After the legal notice of each conditional special use permit, site plan, or subdivision plan is read by the chair, the board will determine if the application is complete and ready for the board to take jurisdiction. The public hearing will begin, at which time the applicant or representative will be given time to present an overview and description of their project. They shall speak to whether or not they agree with the recommended staff stipulations. The board will then have an opportunity to ask relevant follow-up questions of the applicant or staff. The chair will then ask for testimony from the audience. First, anyone wishing to speak or in opposition or concern to the plan may speak. Please come forward to the microphone and state your name and address for the record. This will be the time to express your concerns or ask questions you may have regarding the plan. Next, testimony will come from anyone wishing to speak in favor of the plan. The applicant will then be given a rebuttal period, at which time they should respond to any concerns raised by the prior public testimony. One public member will be allowed to respond to only those items brought forth during the applicant's rebuttal period. After this has been completed, the public hearing will end, and the board will resume the public meeting, at which time the board will deliberate and vote on the application before us. We ask that both sides keep the remarks to the subject at hand and to not repeat what has already been said. We want to be fair to everyone and make the best possible decision based on the testimony presented and considering all applicable approval criteria established in the Nashua Revised Ordinances. Thank you for your interest and courteous attention. I ask you to turn off your cell phones at this time. Old business conditional special use permits, none. Old business subdivision plans, none. Old business site plans, case number 1, tabled to a date uncertain. New business conditional special use permits, none. New business subdivision plans, none. New business site plans, case number 2, Bradford J. Hill Revocable Trust, owner, CrossFit Tough Fitness Club, applicant. Application and acceptance of proposed amendment to NR 449 to change the hours of operation on the approved site plan. Property is located at 14B Broad Street, sheet 62, lot 231, zone general industrial, and this is located in Ward 4. As to case number 2, can I have a motion this application is complete and ready for the board to accept jurisdiction?
So move.
Motion by Mr. Kelly. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Rapucci. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening. I am Attorney Jim Kelly for the applicant. This is, we think, very simple and straightforward. There is just a request to expand the hours to 5 a.m. to 9 p.m., 7 days a week, to allow for different days of the week for different people to come in earlier. And we find that many of the gyms, I should say it's a norm and one of the busier times of day for people to work out. It works better for a lot of people's schedules. 6:30 gets them out of there a little bit too late to get to work. 5 a.m. gives enough time for everyone to get in, get out, and get to work. So we hope that you can see the utility here and the need and approve it.
So what are the current hours right now?
6:30 to 8 or 9.
And that's 7 days a week?
Monday through Friday,
Okay.
and then Saturday, 7 to 2, I believe. Which is strange, you know, when we needed the site plan to be made for the change of use from storage to the fitness facility, I don't know why it seemed that the numbers, the hours were kind of arbitrarily picked by the engineers and included on the site plan when there is no requirement for them to be on the site plan. And so I guess we just didn't catch it at that time, but it would have been more appropriate for us even at that point to have these hours.
And are you guys open on Sunday?
No.
Okay.
I don't know if they anticipate to be open on Sunday, but part of the thing that we are concerned about or want to make sure that we encompass is that there are sometimes special events, and they may be held on a weekend, starting at some reasonable time and ending at some reasonable time. But, you know, even starting earlier in the morning sometimes. For example, we had an event to benefit the Special Olympics just a couple of weeks ago, and it was on a Saturday. And they can easily go beyond 2 p.m., depending on when we start. And in comparison, Good Ale's Bike Shop operates next door in the building next door. They have a couple of sales each year that begin early in the morning and they go till they're finished. And some of them, one of them is very large and brings in a lot of people. And so on those days, it's difficult to get in and out. It would be easier for us to get in early, get out early before that happens. And in many cases, there are other days where it just works better for people to get in on a weekend. Or in other circumstances, it's easier to get in on a weekend. And so we anticipate some activity on Sundays, but we just don't know how much.
Mr. Rapucci?
Was the health club a permitted use there, or did they need zoning relief to put the health club there?
Permitted.
Okay, so the times of operation were set by the planning board, not by the zoning board?
No. They were not set by any board. They were included on the site plan just as a additional bit of information. There was no requirement from any board or anyone regarding any hours of operation.
It was a conditional use permit that came before this board. And to be completely honest, I can't remember precisely what the discussion was about hours when we heard the case at that time. But we do typically look at the site plan to see what the proposed hours are. It's often, you know, something we'll discuss in the context of a site plan.
Yeah, and it's not uncommon for us to even stipulate in hours.
We've
It's
had-
been done.
There was
Yep.
anytime there's ever anything at 14 at this mall, the neighbors there
One neighbor moved.
are extremely, well, they came out in force.
One.
You know, I was on the zoning board, there was way more than one,
I apologize.
okay? Concerned about the activity in that mall. That whole street behind there, there were certainly some people more concerned than others, but there were a lot of concerns about the noise and activity in that mall. Have you got a copy of the letter that we received?
Yes.
From one neighbor?
Yes.
Do you have any comment on that?
I do. I'm a member of the gym. I go there at 6:30 in the morning. I don't drive up there with my radio blasting. There are no people sitting in the parking lot with their radios loud. Conversation is minimal, if any. People get out of their car and walk in, so I don't know. There may be instances where someone is heard talking, where our radio is heard by some folks. I don't think it's unreasonable, and I certainly think it's very limited in any of those instances where it does occur. I can't say that they have never heard any of those things, and I can't say for sure that it is coming from the folks that are going to the gym.
So when you're operating in the morning, are there like open doors? I mean, is there,
I do want to add that we want to respect all of the neighbors too, and if there were a need or a requirement or any other reason or way we could be respectful and work in conjunction with the neighbors to have a harmonious relationship, putting up signs to say, please don't use your radio too loud, drive in, be quiet when you're early in the morning arriving. I don't think that's something that we could make that a known message to all the members, that that's something that we want to do to respect all the neighbors. I just wanted to go to that point more, but open doors, it depends. It's not an everyday occurrence. In the summer, it does happen more often, but it's typically a little bit later in the day, depending on how warm it is. If it's cooler in the morning, it may stay shut. It's a garage roll-up door, And I think there was mention about tires. That's a common thing for some gyms, and in the past 5, 6 years ago, it was really common for a lot of them to use. These don't get used much, and they frankly don't, as far as I know, haven't been used for a regular workout.
Right. I wondered about the garage door, because I've seen that
Yeah.
at other places as well, where that's open during the works. I'm wondering if we could just get a commitment from you that, you know, they would keep that closed at least in the morning hours.
I think perfectly reasonable, yeah, we could do that.
Mr. Weber?
Has there been or will there be any outside activity for gym use?
Yes, there often is. Some of it is, so what happens is you show up there and there's a workout of the day, they call it, on the board. And the person who's addressing the class, coaching the class of people, you all do the same workout. And sometimes it starts with everybody getting out and running around the building. That's about 1/8 of a mile run, I think. Or running out down Broad Street for a mile or so. People are not making a lot of noise while they're running. There isn't activity that's outside beyond that, usually.
Okay, because when they mention tires in there, I can understand when a person has like a, running through tires as you see at a football, type of.
I'll tell you,
thing.
I'll explain the tires. The tires are very large tractor tires that you might see on a front loader, a big, massive front loader. And so they weigh hundreds of pounds, and they're huge. And the way that they are generally used is that they're put on the ground, and you step up to it and flip it over.
Yeah.
And it's just to get some kind of natural activity that you might use in your life for picking things up and doing things. So that doesn't happen often, or really, it's very rare, and I think it's probably something that he's gotten away from using. They just sit there. As far as other activities outdoors, there really are none other than running. Yeah, or a special event. There may just be a lot of people outside doing something in coordination with other things that are going on inside.
Yeah, even those activities, other than running.
Yeah.
Running is no noise. Before, say, 8 o'clock, anything else that happens from 5 to 8 o'clock in the morning,
Besides running,
besides running?
no.
Mr. Leclerc?
I just have a question for staff for a sec. Do you know what the hours are on the regular, we have a sound ordinance in town.
I think that's more for construction.
Well, I think it's like, yeah, do we know what those hours are?
I mean, there's for construction, you can't start before 7 AM,
Well, I think
but
there's
that wouldn't fall into
I
this.
thought there's a property line, there's a day and night property line decibel level.
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I think it's like 65 or 85, something like that.
Yeah, but I think it's different in the certain hours, so. I was just wondering, because, you know,
I'd maybe be able to
Yeah.
speak to what you're getting
Yeah.
at, because I get the spirit of what you're
Yeah.
asking. And code enforcement has been out a number of times at the request of the neighbor who used to live on Chautauqua, and their names escape me at the moment. But they were vocal in how they felt about everything going on there, and other things around that area. So code enforcement came out a number of times and measured decibel levels during times when the gym was operating in the middle of the day and other times, and never found anything to be in violation of any ordinance, noise ordinance, or otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, my inclination, I guess, would be to, if we had a certain time that the noise ordinance flipped anyway, you know, for other purposes, might be useful to understand that.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can look that up.
Other questions for the applicant?
I'd just like a little comment on what the pep talks are.
I don't know.
He's talking about pep talks and laughter in the parking lot. I'm just curious. I think I've talked to this man. He complained to me a year ago, but Anyway,
Laughter and discussion.
Yeah,
I don't
it's
know
kinda-
how- I get it, I understand, and it can wake you up, and I just don't know how, unfortunately, how relevant or offensive it might be in this context to really merit any, I guess, reasoning for a denial, but we do want to respect it, so we would ask people to be quiet as they're talking or walking in, as they're running, not talking too loudly or yelling any encouragement to anybody if that's something that they've heard.
thank you.
You're welcome, thank you.
Mr. Capucci?
Yeah, how long have you been open for?
2 years, almost 3, in January.
And you've never been open on Sunday before?
Correct. Not at this location.
So is that the impetus of this, is to be able to operate on Sunday?
It's more the 5 AM classes midweek, during the week, which a lot of working people really request and need and have at other gyms. And so Sunday is just in addition, and I don't know, I just thought it was easier to hit 5 to 9 across the board in case there happens to be any kind of a random event on a Sunday. Or perhaps if they do install some classes on Sundays, I don't know that 5 AM is necessary for Sunday, but we just went straight across the board.
Thank you.
Mr. Weber, then Mr. Kelly?
Thank you. When people are gonna be running, are you gonna, they gonna like start outside, gather together, talk amongst themselves, say this is what, and then take off? Especially at 5 AM, I would say that's not a good thing.
I can comment on that. That's not how it works.
Okay, thank you.
You gather inside, figure out what to do, and then you're instructed, run out the door, run around, come back.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Kelly?
I'm a little bit confused, sir. How much of your gym's activity is conducted outside? Is running the only thing?
Yes, I would say 2%.
Is it the 2% that generated this letter?
I don't think so. It doesn't sound like it. It sounds like the letter is a response to what they hear in the parking lot as people are showing up and leaving, or generated by that. And there are times when I'm sure if a door is open in the middle of the summer, they can hear someone in there talking or, addressing a large group of people, say 10 to 12 people. And so maybe that's what is part of what they're talking about in the letter with pep talks.
Because I'm trying to figure out how to reach a compromise here. And you've offered one solution, which is to tell your membership to cool it, tamp it down. That's one solution.
Well, I think there is a lot of respect for requests like that within the membership. So it would be a very effective solution. For example, driving in and out of there, it's a narrow egress and ingress area, and there are other businesses there, and there are concerns about the speed at which people come through. There are also people testing bicycles, and so there are concerns about cars going through there, and the bicyclists coming around. So everybody shares in some responsibility in being respectful of everybody else and the coming and going of different customers and people. So cars are instructed to drive slowly, the membership are encouraged to drive slowly through and be cautious of people walking and riding bikes. And by and far, everybody has abided by all of those requests.
I could be wrong, but my sense is that their complaint is more focused on the hour. And I don't know if those other businesses at 5 o'clock in the morning are creating any noise.
That's not what I'm saying.
No, but that's what I'm saying. So
Okay.
let's address the issue of 5 o'clock in the morning. How can you tamp that down?
The concern from the person who emailed is that as people are in the parking lot arriving to go to work out, they are arriving with their cars with music playing loud enough to be heard at their home. And the conversations are loud enough to be heard at their home.
Okay. Now, let's take it piece by piece.
So what
Go ahead.
the proposed solution to that is that all members are instructed, when you arrive, your music is low and conversation is none or very low. And to be honest, to be fair, with all due respect to those folks that hear that, I have to say that people talking is not an offensive or an overly unreasonable thing to be doing. For example, you may be interested in taking walks for your health. You may go with a partner. You may be having a conversation as you walk by someone's house. I think that is exactly the type of and level of conversation that they're speaking about. I mean, I think it's a very quiet area in the morning, as many neighborhoods are. And to go back to when we were working with the code enforcement officer, much of the ambient noise around there was louder than anything coming from the gym.
Alderman Guinness?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just had a question, on the 5 o'clock in the morning, just as a rough guess, the membership, I assume that the membership would like to get in there at 5 o'clock because they're going to work at 7.
Yes,
And that's really the force behind this.
that is absolutely.
So you got a lot of folks people that are active in their jobs, they want to get up in the morning, they want to run down there and do that at 5 o'clock.
Yes.
Or maybe it's 10 or 20 of your members who want that, that's why you're here. And there's a few people that maybe don't like it, but I'm just, I guess I'm answering my own question, but what I just said is generally true, that you've got a desire by the membership to have this available earlier in the morning.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, I just want to,
And Frank,
understand that.
and part of that also is the people that we aren't getting, so this business owner isn't getting additional members who can go to another place at 5 a.m., but maybe would rather come here. And there are a lot of people who, for whatever reason, it doesn't fit into their schedule and have tried to make it work, but couldn't do it anymore, or don't go anywhere else, and aren't getting that.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
I know Mr. Pucci touched on this a little bit, but you talked about the request being just across the board, Monday through Sunday. But given the impetus for, requesting the 5 a.m. time, I, definitely appreciate that Monday through Friday, people going to work. But if it remained 7 a.m. on Saturday and Sunday, would that present an issue from your perspective, or?
Oh, I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Other questions for the applicant this time? Looks like we're all set now. Thank
Okay,
you.
Thank you.
Well, I'm going to ask for the record, even though I know what the answer is already. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in opposition or concern to this plan? Is there anyone wishing to speak in favor of the plan? Does staff have anything to add?
Staff is nothing to add.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions or anything we want to ask of the applicant before we move on and go into the public meeting? No? Good? Okay, this concludes the public hearing on this application. We'll now take our deliberations into the public meeting.
No, I have a question once we get into
Oh, okay. The board does reserve the right to recall any party for further clarification. Mr. Pucci?
So I should know this, and I don't, so maybe staff can help, or you guys can. Oh, so this use in this mall is a permitted use?
Yes.
Yeah.
Conditionally permitted.
So it's, what what constitutes the requirement for a conditional use permit as opposed to something that's permitted?
Well-
Do you know what I'm asking?
Yeah.
Why did they need a conditional use permit to put a gym there? What is the difference between that and just a permitted use?
Conditional use would require it to come back before the planning board for a conditional use permit. And that's outlined in the zoning ordinance use table for that particular use in the zoning district. If it'll be a C in that table that says conditional use. If it's a permitted use by right, it will be a P. So some uses are considered conditional uses because they don't normally fit in that particular zoning district. But anything that has a C in it has to come before the planning board. Occasionally, the board gets a conditional use permit on its own. I know we've had them down in Boston Billiards before, and some other locations where the use that they want to do is a conditional use, and they have
No.
to come.
I'm not asking the question well. I understand that.
Okay.
What I'm saying is, why does the city view it as a conditional use rather than a permitted use? What is it that the city wants the planning board to do with it, to look at?
Well, we've got a,
All of all of these.
got a set of criteria
The
in
whole-
here for
the whole
conditional
criteria.
special use.
Yeah, I'm just not tuning into the gist of what I'm trying to say.
I think I understand what you're saying, and I think that the short answer is, I mean, I don't know about Roger or Linda, but I don't know the answer. I don't know why they made it a conditional use originally in the zoning ordinance. But that's what the zoning ordinance says. This use is conditional. It doesn't say, we're gonna permit this use conditionally because of the following 5 factors. It simply says, this is a conditional use permit, has to go before the planning board. And then there are factors that we're supposed to consider in whether or not we grant the conditional use. And that's-
There's 9, the yellow sheet.
I know the yellow card, I get that. I
Yeah.
know exactly what it is. What I'm trying to say is, someone in the city, when they're laying this out, decides that a gym in that location should not be permitted without further process.
Right.
Why is that? That's my question.
And I-
Why does the city want further process on considering whether or not a gym should be there?
Well, I think, it depends on what this zoning, right?
No,
is
there
general.
should be a real specific answer to that.
But there isn't.
There is, the planning,
Well, not that we know. I mean.
Okay, we
the
don't-
ordinance- Right, but the ordinance, think about it, okay? The ordinance was drafted how many years ago? Yes, you're right that when the alderman adopted that ordinance, there was presumably some reason why, among gyms, because it's not like there are lots of uses that are conditionally permitted in different zones. And there was presumably a reason for that. But what I'm saying is it's not indicated in the ordinance. You can't go look at the ordinance
I
and say-
understand it's not indicated
Right.
in the ordinance. That's why I'm asking the planning department. That's why I'm asking the director of planning for the city. What is it that the city wants out of this? That's what I'm asking. I'm not calling you out, Roger, I'm just saying, my question is not that vague. It's very specific. Why did the city want this to be a conditional use? Is it to cover hours of operation? Is it because it's in the middle of a residential area? Is that what goes behind that kind of thinking?
There could be a number of different reasons. When the aldermen went through each line, they discussed each one on a line-by-line basis when they approved the use tables.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of discussion amongst the aldermen when they went through this process. The city's land use consultant had recommended certain designations, and some of those were added and some were removed. But basically, the discussion that was had was back in probably, the city spent, several meetings on the land use table that they went through each. There's something like almost 400 different use codes. And they went through each one and decided whether or not, and discussed whether or not they wanted that to be a conditional use. And if it was a conditional use, then the board has these criteria that you look at to determine that. The exact reasons for that, well, you have to assume that you have to look at impacts, whether it's going to fit in with a if it's in an industrial district or in a park industrial, does it fit in with the uses? The hours of operations
Okay.
is one of those criteria. Is there adverse impacts? You can just go down the criteria list, and it's up to the board to make those decisions when you're reviewing this, whether
Right.
it meets those criteria.
Thank you.
One
I
one
get
thing,
that.
could I just clarify? This is a GI zone, and gyms are permitted in this zone. The reason why it had to get conditional use permit was because on the original site plan, there was a note that said, any change of use would require a public hearing from the planning board. So that's why when it got approved before, it had to come in for a conditional use permit, because it was a note on the plan.
So gyms are permitted by right, not by condition.
They're permitted by right in this zone.
Right.
It wasn't, right, they had to come in because it was on, a note on the plan. Back when this got approved, the engineer at the time had put on the plan the hours of operation to be generally the 7, I think the 7 to 2 or whatever is listed on the plan. That was the engineer that put the hours of operation, that wasn't the planning board that stipulated them. So that's why they're coming back today to ask to have those amended.
Very helpful, thank you. Okay, I'm pretty clear on that. Thank
So
you.
here's my 2 cents. I mean, I'm looking at our sound ordinances, and because they're online here, so I can see them. And, you know, it's pretty clear in the ordinance, things like, you know, yelling, in this case it says yelling, shouting, hooting, whistling, or singing, at any time or place so as to annoy or disturb the quiet comfort or repose of persons in neighboring premises. And that, you can't do that anytime between 11 PM and 7 AM. So there's an ordinance that, a sound ordinance that really covers the neighbor's complaint as far as I can see. So, I mean, I don't know what happened the last time people went out there, but it seems pretty clear to me that, you know, we have city rules that cover the issue the abutter is bringing up. So that is there, just, I mean, that's the online. But I think, I like the idea of, you know, we have definitely addressed hours of operations on a number of occasions with different
Right.
site plans. I mean, that, I can think of a lot of cases we've done that. And specifically because we've been concerned about abutter noise, you know, I mean, we often have notes on the plan about they can't have the trash.
There's a note on this plan about the
between,
trash
you know,
pickup.
8 and 4 or whatever, because it makes too much noise for the neighbors. So, you know, our precedent for being concerned about the abutters' noise is pretty good. I mean, we've got a lot of that. But I think it's realistic to assume too that, you know, a gym's functionality in the early morning that's pretty popular, right? So we just we gotta weigh those two. I mean, I'm kind of in favor of not having sort of as long hours on the weekend, you know. I think that's a reasonable compromise.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I would suggest, and particularly given that the applicant didn't express any concern about this, is, you know, saying Saturday and Sunday, the hours wouldn't open until 7, because you would expect less demand for early hours of the gym on the weekends, and that gives the neighbors a little bit more time, you know, more likely to be wanting, you know, a little bit of a later morning on Saturday and Sunday.
Right.
And then I think we did get the commitment from the applicant that they would keep the garage door closed during the early morning hours, so I don't know if we want to specify, you know,
Right.
that until.
But I'm a little hesitant of creating stipulations that are designed to enforce an ordinance that we already have. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
Yeah.
we have a sound ordinance. Why are we creating stipulations to do something different than that ordinance? And that ordinance seems to me to be pretty,
What were the hours in that ordinance?
11 PM to 7 AM.
And he wants to open at 5?
Yeah, so theoretically, if you're
5
making a lot of
PM to
noise
11
from between 5 and 7, you're outside that ordinance. And it talks about
You are,
radios
but-
on cars as a 50-foot rule,
Go
like
ahead,
if you
Mike, I'm
can
sorry.
hear it audibly at
What he
50
calls
feet, that's outside the
I know,
ordinance.
I'm jumping in, this is executive session.
I'd like to suggest, when they do the throwdown, the flipping over the big tire, to restrict the hours on that, because I would think that would make a lot of voice sounds in the parking lot, and you don't want to be doing that early in the morning. So if there are a restriction on loud outdoor activities such as the throwdown and tire flipping, don't do that early in the morning.
It didn't sound like they were doing that outside, though.
Well, where do you flip the tire?
Inside.
No, he
Oh,
was
that-
saying outside.
It's like a
No,
parking
he
lot
wasn't
thing, isn't
saying
it?
outside, no. Inside.
Shall we ask the applicant?
I asked him, and
Where's
that's
the
what he
tire
said.
flipped?
I said they,
He said the only activity they do outside is running.
oh, okay, okay.
I
Yep.
mean,
Yeah, I mean, it did say that, but
well,
I don't know that we need it. Let's talk through first before we open the meeting again.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, again, I'm still hesitant about setting rules on what people can do. I mean, there's no end to that list of things that you can,
Yeah, too much is not
and
good.
then you go to
Making your own
just
rules.
making noises, and then you say, well, what noises? Noises that are above the ordinance?
Yeah, yeah,
That's clear, that's already in the rules.
yeah.
The issue then is how you're gonna make them comply.
That's a Nashua police issue.
Do you wanna go there?
Well, no, what I'm saying, a noise ordinance would be covered by law enforcement. That's a law enforcement enforcement.
Yeah.
It's not code enforcement, and it's not any board. It's, if there's a noise ordinance violation, the police department handles that. So it
Why
wouldn't,
would we approve something that would be in violation?
Well, I think we are. I think we're,
If you go to 5 o'clock, you are.
no, because they can be open and not make noise above the ordinance.
yeah, not, being open at 5 o'clock is not in and of itself a violation of the noise ordinance. I mean, Dunkin'
No, but
Donuts
if
is
the
open
noise
at
is
5 a.m.
generated
and
Because they are open at 5 o'clock, yeah, you are. You're setting up a precedent that's not good.
Well, I'm just saying there, I mean, it's not that there, no business can be open at 5 AM. That's not in and of itself a violation of the noise ordinance. I mean, there's plenty of other businesses that are open at 5 AM, right? So,
Some are 24/7.
right. I think it's the question of, I think what Scott's saying is, there's already this existing ordinance, so if they are making excessive noise between the hours of 5 and 7, that would be a violation of the ordinance. Mr. Pucci?
yeah, I'm kind of in agreement with what's being said. I do think, though, that maybe we can look at just changing the weekday hours and just leaving the weekends alone.
Yeah, I
Because,
like that.
you know, I just know, the thing I can't stand about conditional use permits is that it drags the planning board into a zoning board area. And the problem with that is that if, you know, people get confused by the opportunity to have, like, we're looking at, exactly what you're saying is exactly what I think is right, that we really don't want to get into making little rules. That's why it's more of a zoning board thing, because that's what the zoning board does, is it puts limitations on things like that. And, you know, the conditional use permit thing has always confused me because it leaves the zoning board right out. The best example that I can remember of that is when they were looking at putting the soup kitchen near the school. And that came before this board. It bypassed the zoning board and came before this board because it was a conditional use. And in my opinion, it shouldn't have been, because dealing with those kind of things is not what this board really does well. So the limits on things, I don't think that neighbors, I know that the neighbors in that area are always on guard about that mall. I'm happy to hear it's a permitted use, and that, Linda's explanation of that meant a lot to me, because, okay, we're not letting them do something they're not allowed to do, it's just a matter of putting criteria on it. But I think that allowing them to be open on Sunday, if all the people are usually home on Sunday, certainly not everybody, if they start hearing those noises that they hear during the week on Sundays, I think it would cause more problem for that neighborhood. to have that. I think the commitment from the applicant saying that they're aware, they're tuned into what this complaint is, they won't make any noise that's unreasonable before 7, I trust them on that. I think that's a reasonable way to handle it, but I would prefer to leave the weekends alone. I think the neighbors would probably appreciate that a lot. So,
I just want to say, I mean, I think it's fine if the consensus of the board is that we don't, in this case, feel like it's appropriate to impose some additional condition in terms of, beyond saying the hours themselves. But I do think it's appropriate and within the scope of this board's role to say, we think it's reasonable in this case to impose an additional condition upon the approval. So, I mean, I think there's not a fine line between
No, there isn't.
what
You're right.
zoning does and what planning does. So, I mean, I do think it's appropriate in cases, like I said, if the consensus is we don't want to do that here, I think that's all fine and good. But I don't think it's never appropriate for us to.
and I don't either. I don't want to imply that I do. I didn't mean to come across.
No, I know you didn't. I know that's not what you meant at all, but I just, wanted to say, I do think it's, it's within the scope of what we do on the board, and so I don't think we should, feel like we're, overstepping our bounds by doing that. Alderman McGinnis?
Oh, well, yeah, I just, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I mean, could we do something like Monday through Friday and approve that? We'd have to amend, I just noticed that the applicant's letter does mention Sunday. They're obviously concerned about hours of operation to Sunday and Saturday. It seems to me that's what they're concerned about.
Right, and I think we have.
And if we let them do it on the weekdays and just say Monday through Friday,
And I asked expressly whether they would be okay if,
that's a great compromise, I
you know,
think.
the weekends being later, and he said that wasn't an issue, so.
Yeah, the attorney said it was not an issue, so I don't know if that's something we can do, if it's appropriate within the scope, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I think so.
It's a good idea. I think unless there's any other comments, I'd make a motion to that effect.
Well,
So I'd like to
don't
make-
know, but I'm not totally
Oh.
convinced between the Saturday and the Sunday, I don't know. I mean,
Okay.
as long as the time is later. Yeah. Dave,
Right, isn't that what he,
I don't know,
that's what you're suggesting, right?
What's that?
That the time would be later on Saturday and Sunday, right? That's-
It would be as it is now.
Which is 7.
They're asking for a change, and we would allow the change from Monday through Friday. People get up, they want to go to work,
I think that's.
but we don't allow it for,
That's
we don't give them
the other.
Saturday and
saying
Sunday.
leave the weekend hours as were on the plan.
Which is
no
7.
Sunday.
No, it isn't.
Oh, no
Sunday's
Sunday, right.
closed.
7 to 2.
Well, let's see, what does it actually say on the plan? Does it ever say on?
Well, I think that's the amended plan.
It doesn't really
This is
give you the not,
It does say, yeah, building
On-
to
on the
7
staff
days a week
report.
on Saturday. So, yeah, I mean, I'd be okay if we want to say, leave Saturday to this, but give them the same hours on Sunday.
That's what
Yeah, if that's what you're suggesting.
I don't have an issue with that, but I don't think that's what you guys should.
Well, this says it's gonna be Sunday and
Right.
Sundays included.
That's what they're requesting.
Yeah,
That's not
so
what
we're
they're-
saying no to
They get it.
Sunday. Is that true?
Some people are, yeah. I'm not, but some people.
Mr.
are.
Robbins?
Well, as I look at this again, the complaint seems to center mostly, the only time that's mentioned that I see here is being awoken before 6 a.m. Now, if that's the case, that's an hour before the facility is open now, is that correct?
Half hour.
I think they're open at
6:30, okay, a half hour. So, if that's correct, so I guess I'm a little confused that how this is all happening before the facility is open, unless the facility is open before it's allowed to be open. I guess, personally, it's a fitness center. When do people use fitness centers? They use them at odd hours. They use them when they can. Some ways, I'm surprised that the applicant isn't in here wanting to open the fitness center at 4 o'clock in the morning, because I know people who are waiting at the door at 4 o'clock in the morning. My sense and my experience is that people are often very solitary early in the morning when they, you know, you just want to go, you want to do your thing, you want to get out, you want to go about the rest of your day. You're not socializing at 5 o'clock in the morning. The second thing is that being open at 7 o'clock in the morning on a weekend does not seem to me to be out of, you know, inappropriate at all. You think about the businesses that are open at 7 o'clock, anything to do with construction. You know, most of our supermarkets are open at 7 o'clock in the morning. There are businesses that do all sorts of things. So I personally, 5 to 9 during the week, 7 to 9 Saturday and Sunday, doesn't seem unreasonable at all. There is a noise ordinance, and I don't want to see the applicant back here in a year requesting additional hours.
Yeah, I think, and I misspoke before, thinking that Sunday they already had hours, but yeah, so I agree. I mean, I think the 5 to 9, Monday through Friday, and then starting at 7, Saturday and Sunday, that strikes me
7
as reasonable.
aligns with the noise ordinance, so.
Right.
I'd be okay with that. We can just vote on it.
The only thing just one more thing. Having dealt with things in that neighborhood in the past, I think what happens here is the notification that goes out to people doesn't say, the gym is looking to change its hours to be open on Sunday. The notification is very uninformative. It simply says a change in the site plan or in the plan. It doesn't say what the change is, if I'm correct about that. So, I just, it's in what?
It's in their letter that they knew.
Well, they knew what was going, yeah.
They knew what it was.
Yeah, they know what's going on.
Yeah, so these people, but you're right, maybe you don't know.
Yeah, I don't think I can support changing things on the weekend, personally. I think that the neighborhood probably isn't aware that that's what will happen here. And I'm speculating, I realize that, but that's just my experience with that area. So I'll leave it at that.
Just as a point of clarification, would the notice indicate the purpose for which they were seeking the amendment?
Yes, it would say that it is for a change of hours, and actually, this person did call in and speak to someone, and, you know, they also can come in and look at the file, and also, you know, we do, if they want to see the staff report, it's online, which would explain in here exactly what the hours that they're looking to amend. And can I also just point out that this person that is, that did send in the email, I believe it's Broadview, that's the road. I just wanted to point out, that's where the person who sent in the email, that's where they live. It's not behind the building.
It's to the west. It's not where the other person that used to complain lived on the other side, Chautauqua side.
Right.
Anybody else? Someone make a motion? We'll get it going. Yeah.
Mr. Leclerc?
Yeah, we can talk in the middle of it. So I'll make a motion in new business number 2, site plan, owners Bradford J. Hill, Revocable Trust, location 14B Broad Street. To make the motion that the plan does meet the requirements outlined in NRO section 190-146D. And I would put the stipulation on it that the hours of operation be allowed from 5 to 9 p.m., 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Friday, and 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. on Saturday and Sunday.
So motion is by Mr. Leclerc to approve new business number 2, finding that it does meet the requirements outlined in NRO Section 190-146D, but subject to the stipulation that the approval of the change of hours will be from 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Friday, and 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. on Saturday and Sunday. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Robbins. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
2 nays. So, 6-2, motion passes.
Oh, Mr. Chair, I'd like to ask the applicant, do they flip the tires indoors or outdoors?
Well, it's a little late for that.
Yeah,
All right.
it's in.
Not important.
You can ask them though afterwards, if you want. Thank you.
So now we have to vote on,
Other business, case number 1, review of tentative agenda to determine proposals of regional impact. Claire?
I'd like to make a motion, having reviewed the tentative agenda, that there are no items of regional impact.
Mr. Leclerc, having reviewed the tentative agenda, makes the motion, there are no proposals of regional impact. Is there a second to that motion?
A second.
Seconded by Mr. Acucci. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, and then, other business case number 2, adoption of the 2018 meeting and deadline dates for the City of Nashua Planning Board, and we had tabled this from our last meeting on October 5th. Mr. Clary, you had a requested change, I believe?
Yeah, I'd like to propose that we don't have the meeting on, March 1st. That aligns with, the National School District holiday that week, so it tends to be a more difficult meeting time for both applicants, people who are coming to wanna see what's going on, and even some of us. So I'd like to propose to move that meeting. You know, the next Thursday in that month is the 8th, which I think is fine with me, but we usually try to spread it out by 2 weeks, right? So would we move the 15th to the 22nd?
Or would we just skip the week?
I don't know. March is, Roger, you guys, what do you think about March? We have to have a certain number of meetings, or just one per month as a minimum?
Well, typically, we try to do it on the first and the third Thursday of every month to be consistent.
Yeah.
But there may be reasons why, you might want to switch it, or just have one meeting a month. You only have one meeting in April because of some holidays that occur during that month.
And one in February, so maybe it makes
Right.
sense to still have 2.
No, we have 2 in February.
Yeah.
Oh, we still have,
First and the
we have
15th.
2 in February, so.
We could look at doing the 8th and the 22nd on March.
Right. That's what I'm thinking.
That's not a problem, it's just gonna be an odd, we'll have to make sure we can get the room those nights.
Yeah.
And I don't see why we couldn't, but just in case someone's booked them far in advance, some aldermanic committee,
Yeah.
we could look at changing those dates.
We could propose the change and then have it come back up at the next meeting for.
Subject to confirmation that we can get the space.
Yeah.
I think we did that last year.
Anybody have any other ones that, I checked all the rest of them against holidays, I didn't see anything that popped up, but.
Mr. Leclerc, can I just ask a quick, I missed part of the reason for moving the March 1st meeting because.
That's the school district, Nashua School District holiday week, so, I think for people, winter break, so like a lot of people take vacation. So like if we have something that has like, people wanna come in and, voice their opinion, it might be a complicated week to, get attendance, both in the public and potentially even us, so, yeah. But we try to stay away from those weeks if we can, because they're less accessible to people. That's the only ones that I was really proposing. Anybody else have any issues with any of them?
So the thought would be the 8th and the 22nd.
Yeah, that's what
possibly.
I'm gonna propose.
Right, and subject to
So the
room availability.
Okay, I'll make a motion to adjust the March 2018 meeting dates to the 8th and the 22nd, subject obviously to room availability, and that the remainder of the preliminary agency review and abutter notifications is policy with the appropriate offset.
So motion by Mr. Claire to amend the 2018 meeting deadline dates for March to be the 8th and 22nd. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Mr. Rapucci. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. All right. Discussion items? No? Good? Mr. Kelly?
I would like to make a motion to adjourn, please.
Motion to adjourn. Second? Second by Mr. Rapucci. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes, and we are adjourned at 8
Early
o'clock.
birds, 8 a.m., 8 p.m.